In today's episode, you'll meet the fifth ever podcaster. He's a true digital media pioneer. From launching the largest Texas high school football podcast network to debuting music legends on his shows, my guest has shaped the podcasting landscape for nearly 2 decades. In this episode, he reveals the secrets of podcast success, shares his insights on AI's role in the industry, and explains why authenticity is key to building audience trust. Join us for a fantastic conversation with a true podcasting legend and futurist.
Welcome to the Podcasting Secrets Show, where successful creators share their best stories, secrets, and strategies. I'm your host, Nathan William. Hello, incurable creators, and thanks for joining us for this episode of Podcasting Secrets. Today, I am joined by Chris Doelle. Chris is a futurist, an AI consultant, speaker, a podcaster, author. And did you know he was the fifth podcaster in history? We are going to explore that story and a whole bunch of others on this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
Oh, you bet. Thank you, Nathan, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Chris, you have some pretty cool accomplishments. And instead of saying them all in the intro, I'm just going to go through some of these and we're going to talk about them because I'm sure you have some really fun stories behind them. Can you tell us your story, your journey to become a podcaster and becoming the fifth podcaster of all time?
I've always been, I mentioned futurist. That's a term I learned later, and I thought I'll use that. That sounds good. But I'm a tech nerd, always have been. I've always tried to test out new technology and see what ways I can use it to tell stories and to have fun. So when podcasting was invented, it was invented by Adam Curry and Dave Weiner. Adam Curry, you may or may not know, former MTV VJ from the early days when they actually played videos. He did a show called Headbangers Ball. Nobody knew he was a nerd, but him and this gentleman from San Francisco, Silicon Valley, created podcasting. And I happened to be in that circle at the time, playing with it, and thought, yeah, this is kind of cool. So I immediately thought of what ways can I create shows? And the first one I came up with, being a Texan, I thought this one can't lose, a Texas high school football show.
Sounds like a smart idea. And so how did that go? And how long did you run that?
That one's still running, actually. It's turned into the largest Texas high school football website, giving news and information. And now it's actually, during football season, there's about 40 different podcasts on that site, all different school podcasts, regional podcasts, you name it. We do a ton of different ones on there. But how it came about, I was, like I said, testing out what made sense. So I thought, I don't want to just sit there and talk about Texas high school football. I thought, what better way than just get somebody, a friend of mine, who we played high school football together in Texas. We then both became officials. We also found we're living together in Houston, just after college, trying to figure out who we are. And the thing we found that we loved to do was Friday nights, go to a football game, because there's so many great ones around the Houston area. So I pitched it to him. He's a very shy guy. And I said, Mike, I've got this idea. We're going to do this podcast covering Texas high school football. Of course, he's like, no one wants to hear from us. Why do you want to hear from us? And I'm like, trust me, we're just people like the people on TV. They're just people, right?
Yep.
So I convinced him to give it a try. And then I said, you know what? After episode 1 was out, I said, I bet we can get into the games for free too. And of course, that made him very nervous, but I made up a press badge for each of us and they let us in. And then the next week I go, Mike, I think they'll let us sit in the press box. And sure enough, they did. And the following week, I'm like, I think they'll even feed us. And of course they did. One thing led to another, and we've been doing that show now for going on 20 years this August.
Wow. Yeah. Tell me about that journey. How much traffic do you have now? How much revenue have you generated? How did you monetize that?
We monetize that by selling advertising in it, because we got a rabid fan base and they all are, red-blooded Americans or red-blooded Texans. So they all like beef. They all like,
Ford trucks. Yeah,
exactly. So, it's a demographic that a specific advertiser wanted to get in front of. Like Whataburger is a big chain here of hamburger chains. They were one of our sponsors. Academy Sports and Outdoors. They sell everything sports related. So we just sold them on the fact that, look, we've got this audience that hangs on our every word, not because we're experts, but because we're passionate. And as you know, that's why podcasting works. It's because it's real people talking about real things, and it's not Madison Avenue trying to sell you something.
Interesting. One of your other accomplishments is that you are or your claims to fame is you're a tech early adopter, and you've been using AI since the 80s. Can you tell us the story about that? What AI did you use back then?
Well, that was actually the first one I used is called Eliza, and that was on the ARPANET, the precursor to the internet.
Yeah.
And it was available only at colleges and universities. So I got in, with some people who would let me go in there and play around on it. And AI was stupid back then. It was very dumb. It was kind of a neat little novelty, but I thought, I don't know that this one's going to work out. And obviously ChatGPT comes out a couple years ago and changes everything. So that's another area that we're kind of exploring a lot of right now.
It certainly is changing how podcasting works. And let's talk about that a little bit more in a bit. One of your other claims to fame is that you've had millions of downloads across hundreds of shows. Other than the Texas high school football show, what are some of your other shows that you've enjoyed the most or that have had the most traffic?
Yeah, within a few months of that first show, I started several other ones. I started just to test out the waters, a hyper-local one called This Week in Houston, because I lived in Houston at the time. And I tried the regional one was Lone Star Gridiron. The international one was a show called the PMC Top 10, which stood for the Pod Music Countdown. And in that, I played the role of, you probably won't remember Casey Kasem from the American Top 40, but I would pull podcasters all over the globe, and they would tell us who they're playing in these music shows. Because at the time, ASCAP, BMI were very strict. You can't play any of their music. So it was all indie rockers, indie bands, indie, groups. And so I would compile who's getting the most airplay. And that one, and this was 1985, was getting something like 80,000 downloads an episode. It was insane, and there was no market for it. The people loved it. The advertisers didn't understand it, so they didn't show up. So we ended up closing that one down. But the artists actually sold a lot of albums because of that. And,
Right.
James Brown, he was one of the ones, when Clear Channel took over radio and bought up all these stations, they moved out the old guard, moved in the pretty people, the young people who are pretty, maybe not that great a singer, but auto-tune, was coming in. So people like James Brown, his last album that was released, he couldn't get airplay at all. The Godfather, he could not get airplay. So I debuted his album on that show. Ann Wilson from The Heart, her song, she couldn't get that played. I debuted her song. Ingrid Michaelson, her song debuted on there. Death Cab for Cutie was unknown. They debuted on that show. I had the first podcasting convention was in late 2005. And we went out to California, bunch of people. I had this guy come up to me, give me a big hug. And he's a singer-songwriter named Brother Love. And he almost had tears in his eyes. And he said, this is the first time in my music career I paid my rent from album sales. And it's because we had been playing all his songs.
That's really cool. Create the media company for an industry, and you just were creating a new type of media company.
Right.
Of all of these shows that you've worked on and spent so much time with this Texas high school football show, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you get through them?
Early on, it was, I spent most of 2005 traveling around the country, speaking to business groups, speaking to college organizations, saying this new media is here. It's going to change everything. You can be the media. And it was blank stares and crickets. I mean, it was way too early.
Yeah.
The phrase I love is the pioneers get the arrows, right?
Yeah.
And so bleeding edge. I couldn't sell it to anybody, as podcasters, much less advertisers. And that took a long time. And obviously I had to do other things to make money. So I've had a marketing company for 30 years. So I was able to do this as a side gig. and wait until it finally hit. It hit when iTunes added podcasting to their platform. That was a big hit. And then the next big hit was COVID. And that's when people are stuck at home. They're like, what is this thing? And started listening to podcasts.
That was a huge jump for podcasting. Yeah. What is the biggest mistake that you've made in podcasting or you've seen someone else make?
Quitting too early is the mistake I've seen a lot of people. Like the Pod Music Countdown, it had the biggest audience of any one of my shows. And I was called the hardest working man in podcasting at the time because I had 5 different shows going every week just to prove the model.
How often did you publish those 5 shows?
Yeah, once a week.
5 episodes. Okay.
Yeah. And I had just, like I said, great traffic, great potential, but I was spending a lot of money, a lot of time making this thing happen. I just finally just canceled the show. Had I kept that show with the way it started,
you'd be Joe Rogan now if you had.
Oh, I'd be, way beyond that. But yeah, and so that's the biggest thing is quitting. The average person, a number I saw was something like out of the 25 million podcasts out there, 90-something% have never made it past episode 11. So that's the one that kills everybody. And because it is hard work, it's hard when you're not getting a response. You have to stick with it.
Yeah, build that following. So on the flip side of that, we've talked about challenges and mistakes. What's the secret sauce? What is the secret to success that you've seen that separates the successful podcasters from that 90+% that fails?
Yeah, I love that you call it the secret sauce because that's a phrase I use when I'm talking with people. I believe the secret sauce 100% is guesting on other shows. So that's you getting in front of other people's audiences. I've been doing this almost 20 years. I'm on your show. That tells you that that's got value.
That's right. Because you have a chance to pull from our audience and our audience becomes your audience and you're credible, much more effective than trying to run ads on other podcasts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. A study came out last week. Podcasting has the top ROAS or return on ad spend of any media period right now.
Nice.
It's 4.9x, which means if you invest $1 advertising in a podcast, you're going to do $4.90 worth of sales, which, is the rest of them are in the good ones are at like 3.5. So podcasting is killing everything right now. So become a guest for sure.
Yeah.
Do your show for sure, because you can get a guest opportunity much easier if you're swapping guests. Bring you on my show and we swap audiences there. But at the very least, you need to advertise on podcasts.
So how do you recommend that people advertise on podcasts? Do you go directly to the podcasts and just try to cut a deal directly with them?
That's one of the best ways if you have the time to do it. If not, that's one of the things my company does is we help, marry the podcasters and the advertisers. So yeah, it's definitely same thing with guesting. We offer a guesting service too that helps you find guesting opportunities.
Let's talk about AI in podcasting. Talk to us about what AI can do for podcasters today, and then maybe about your vision of what you think AI is going to be doing for us in the future as a futurist.
Yeah, I love that question. What it can do right now, transcribe. Transcription is perfect. Descript is one of the first ones that did that. Descript as an editor, I don't like that much. But Otter is another good one that as far as show notes transcriptions. And you think, why do I need the transcription? Well, that's Google juice, right? Because those are searchable terms, right. Everything that's said. So there's some good editing. There's some great programs like Suno that create audio. You can create your intros and outros, your background music. You can do all of that and not worry about licensing because it's all yours. So there's a lot of different ways. In fact, there's one show I do for a professor at the University of Texas who is using voice cloning AI.
Yep.
He's a pastor. He's a speaker. He is a lecturer. He talks all day, every day, and he doesn't want to talk again on his podcast. So instead, he sends me a script. I have trained AI on his voice, and I feed it the script. It spits out the audio. And we took it and played it for his wife, and his wife was shocked. She's like, that is him. That it does his pause the same way. It does his chuckle the same way, every bit of it, which is insane. Yeah. So we did his show every week from text.
Today's episode of Podcasting Secrets is sponsored by Podup, the ultimate podcasting platform. As podcasters, we're always looking for ways to simplify our workflows, grow our reach, and make more money. What if I told you that there's a tool that combines more than 35 essential podcasting features into one platform? That's exactly what Podup offers, and it's transforming how we create, grow, monetize, publish, syndicate, and do so many other things with our podcasting content. From recording and editing to website building and audience engagement, Podup covers virtually the entire podcasting process. What sets Podup apart is its focus on growth and monetization. The platform includes AI-powered features that help you save time on tasks like creating short video clips and transcribing episodes. It also offers tools for guest management, content syndication, and email list building, all accessible from one centralized dashboard. For those of you looking to turn your podcast into a revenue stream, Podup provides integrated monetization tools that help you market products, courses, and services directly to your audience. What's even better is that with Podup, you don't have to waste time and money switching between multiple softwares to produce your podcast. With Podup, you get all 35 modules within one fully integrated platform and for a fraction of the cost. If you're interested in simplifying your podcast workflow while expanding your reach and making some money while you're at it, check out podup.com. That's PODUP.com and get a free trial of the software. Now back to the show. Yeah, those are amazing. Any other AI features that you think are super cool?
Well, there's a lot of promise. There's a lot of people selling a lot of things for the software as a service model, where they're telling you $20 a month, do this, $20 a month, do this. You're going to end up spending $1,000 a month and not get a whole lot more than you get doing it yourself right now. But you mentioned the future. I think the future is going to, it may sound weird since we're talking about AI, but the focus is really going to be on humans doing it more human-like. Because as I mentioned before, if you're Madison Avenue, you're selling slick commercials, you're selling slick stuff. That's what AI is going to evolve into. And it's going to throw back to who's real. I have ended every show, hundreds of thousands of episodes, with 3 words: keep it real. Because that is why podcasting works.
Yeah, it's hard to connect with a robot. It's hard to feel that authenticity in a relationship with a robot. Keeping it real will always differentiate from the AI, for sure.
Yeah, and that means leave the ums and the ahs in. Unless it's horrible, you can take a few of them out, but leave some of them in there.
That's right. Some people talk about it, and they call it the YouTube effect. There's a statistic that 96% of people don't trust ads. And so when a big corporation comes in and they create this perfect YouTube video, has perfect lighting and perfect actors, perfect smiles and perfect, nobody wants to watch it because it feels like an ad and you don't trust it. But then someone with just a camera that's shaking, that doesn't have the perfect light, and some skateboarder does some crazy trick, right? It's real. And that imperfection gives the credibility to that video. So I'm with you.
If you're talking about AI playing a role, the smart AI will develop into that to be more human. And then at the end of the day, any technology needs to make it easier to do repetitive tasks. So that's where I would find tools to shortcut, but I would never shortcut on this, the human interaction.
That's right. AI cannot take the place of that. Okay. Any other ideas for the future of where AI is going to go in podcasting?
In podcasting, I'm just not sure. Like I said, I know it's going to evolve a lot of places. It's going to first evolve towards where it can make money, because that's what everything does, right?
Yeah.
But there's going to be some people out there, some of these pioneers, who just have a vision for doing something positive. They'll develop something nice. Like one of the tools that a friend of mine created the early days is a simple editor. And let me see, what's the name of it? Now it's not coming up. It's called Levelator. Okay. And what you do is you have a WAV file, you drag it over the app, levels all the audio, it compresses the audio, does all that. He made that back in 2006, gave it free to the world. I've been using that tool for almost 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the thing's going to happen with AI too. Some AI nerd is going to come up with something that's amazing, but isn't financially, beneficial, but it will help mankind. So I think there's going to be some good stuff too, but there's going to be a whole lot of people trying to make some money too.
I saw an interesting statistic recently that currently AI can save podcasters 50% of their time in podcasting. So that's come a long way already.
Yeah, it definitely has. And it depends. There's a lot of things you can do, though, in your own systems to save a whole lot of time, just in how you record, just in being trained and practiced. The more shows you do, the less of those uncomfortable pauses, the less editing that has to happen. Just becoming a good speaker and being comfortable with your own, voice, that alone will save you 50% of your time from the days when you started.
Can you share with us any of your other secrets that might save us a bunch of time as we produce our podcasts?
Well, as far as saving time, I create envelopes, what I call them, in my editor. So I will load up, if I do a show for the Texas High School Coaches Association, it has the same intro, the same outro, the same background music. I just slide in the new audio each time and move things around a little bit. And that makes the editing super fast instead of adding it in every time you do it. So that's a simple one that most people pick up on really fast, but it's just things like that. And it's finding the right tools. If you're doing audio only, can only connect with somebody on a phone call, there's a great app that is available to record the phone call. And that makes the audio quality is awesome.
So as a futurist, we've talked about AI, and I know AI is a big piece of where future of podcasting is going. Besides AI, what do you see in the future? What are the most important trends for podcasting?
I think the fact that it's growing so much is the most important trend, period. Because like I mentioned, the advertising is higher than any other medium right now. Also, another study came out about a month or so ago that said podcasters are the most trusted media personalities in the world right now.
Interesting.
And that, again, just because we're real. Now, what I see following that is going to be big business trying to sound real.
That's right.
So they're going to leave in intentional mess ups. They're going to, and after a while, that won't seem real anymore. So
that's right.
I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
That's a really interesting concept. Is one of the next things that'll happen will be businesses trying to pretend that they are real, and then they'll mess it all up.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's hard. It's hard. Or maybe, just maybe, one or two of them will realize, oh, I can be real. And it'll change who they are.
It'll change their brand. It'll change their following if they can really do it for real. You've seen some people do that. Like I remember Matt, he didn't do it on a podcast, but I saw Matt Cutts, if you remember him. He used to work for Google, and he did a blog about SEO totally on his own while he worked for Google. And he had all this inside information from Google, but he was doing it personally. And he was real, and he shared the things as they came out. And those kind of models where we can empower people to say how it really is, without the corporation kind of taking over that voice. Okay, you talked about how podcasting is the most trusted medium, how podcast hosts are the most trusted personalities in media. Why do you think that is?
Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record because they're real. At the end of the day, it's people talking passionately about whatever their subject, if they're a personal coach or if they're talking about Game of Thrones or whatever the heck they're talking about, Texas high school football. When I talk about Texas high school football, it's much more passionate than when I talk about, I don't know, how to mow your grass or something. So that's the key is I'm most real when I'm talking passionately about something I firmly and strongly believe in.
Yeah, definitely. You talked about how podcasting provides the best ROAS or return on ad spend. Why do you think that is? Is it because of that same thing? Because it's real?
That's it exactly. Because of the conversion. And, a lot of people, I guess, confuse YouTube with podcasting. True podcasting is audio only. A lot of people will call a podcast a video cast. Even if you do a video cast, you should pull the audio and send it out as its own podcast feed, because the return on a call to action is 4 times higher in audio only because you make that connection so much stronger. When you think about it, when you and I are listening to a podcast, if I'm driving down the road, I can listen to audio. I can't watch a YouTube video. If I'm walking the dog, all the things that you can, the time shifted aspect is good for all of it. But the fact that the fact that you can multitask while doing audio, it's harder to multitask and watch video. You kind of have to be glued.
That's why I listen to podcasts, right? It's at a time I'm doing something else. I'm driving a car.
Yeah.
I'm doing some dishes, working out in the yard, and I can make time that was otherwise not as effective, more effective.
And you think about it, you're usually on a headset or earphones or something like that. And that host is not only feeling like they're right there with you, they're literally in your brain right then. You can't get any tighter connection to the audio.
And if you're doing something else with your hands, if you're driving the car or washing the dishes or working in the yard, whatever, it's not like you can easily skip an ad either.
Right.
Like, that ad plays,
exactly.
You're listening to.
And podcasters have really went back old school with the host read ads. Remember when television first came out, they'd come on and say, I really like this product. And that's what podcasters do. They speak in their own voice. They don't run. Some of them do. They'll run a prepackaged, pre-produced ad and people tune those out. But when somebody you've listened to for hundreds of hours, who you trust and you like, and they say, oh, I got these new shoes. They're really awesome. You should check them out. That carries a lot more weight.
It sure does. Because it's not the company telling you they're awesome.
Right. It's not saying, it's a third party. And that's the whole reason why rating systems work all over the internet, is because it's somebody else.
That's right. What's next for you? Are you going to sell your Texas high school football network to ESPN?
If they give me a big enough check, I would. But yeah, in fact, I'm actually heading to the Texas High School Coaches Association convention for 4 days and going to speak. I'm going to MC a couple panels. And so I'm doing a lot more of that, going around and talking to groups about podcasting, but also talking to groups about AI. How, look, you should be paying attention to this. It's a game changer. The freight train is moving fast, so you better get on it.
Yeah, I bet you your time might be right for exploring an acquisition with someone like ESPN. It seems like podcasting is so huge right now. So many corporations have decided they need to get into it. And if they can buy their way into it.
Right. And hopefully they buy their way into it and then they don't sell its soul out and turn it into what kills ESPN right now.
Yeah, that's right. I really appreciate you being on the show today, Chris.
Of course.
If our audience has loved it and found value like I have, and they want to get to know you and your products and services a little bit better, what are the best ways for them to do that?
Well, I am everywhere on social media. My name is spelled funny, so I'm very easy to find. It's Chris Doelle, but it's spelled Doelle. And like I said, you search for me on any social media, or you can go to our website, freshmediaworks.com. And that's where we actually have an offer that we can make for your guests or your audience too.
Is there a specific offer that you want to offer to?
Yeah, we actually have a podcast audit that we do in different levels. We have a standard, a premium, and a comprehensive audit where we go in and we take a look at your podcast and we look at the website and we look at your branding. We look at all the stuff related to your podcast and help you find some ways to improve it. Sometimes it's a simple tweak and you can double your audience. Sometimes it's, you're missing out on these 5 things, whatever it is. But we have these different levels of audits. You can go to freshmediaworks.com/podcast audit and buy one of the standard premium or comprehensive packages, and you get $99 off if you use the code SECRETS.
So, Chris, again, thanks for being with us. Can we have you sign off with your signature?
All right. Until next time. I'm talking with Nathan Gwilliam. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm Chris Doelle, and keep it real.
And here are my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, Chris Doelle was one of the first 5 podcasters in history, starting in the early days of podcasting with Adam Curry and Dave Weiner. Number 2, His first podcast was about Texas high school football, which has grown into the largest Texas high school football website with multiple podcasts. Number 3, early challenges in podcasting included difficulty in convincing businesses and advertisers of its potential value. Number 4, the biggest mistake in podcasting, according to Doelle, is quitting too early. Many podcasts don't make it past episode 11. Number 5, the secret sauce for podcast success is guesting on other shows to expand audience and reach. Number 6, podcasting currently has the highest return on ad spend, or ROAS, of any type of media at 4.9 times. Number 7, AI is being used in podcasting for transcription, editing, creating intros and outros, and even voice cloning for some shows. Number 8, despite AI advancements, Doelle emphasizes the importance of keeping podcasts real and human. Number 9, podcasters are currently considered the most trusted media personalities, largely due to their authenticity. And finally, number 10, host-read ads on podcasts are particularly effective as they leverage the trust built between the host and the audience. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Podcasting Secrets. I wish you success in your show. And if you're looking for a great podcasting platform to help power your success, I recommend you check out Podup. It has 35 integrated modules to help you create, grow, and monetize your podcast. And it has a lot of AI tools built into it as well. You can get a free trial at podup.com.